thanks for joining us. We're in the last week of an election campaign and there are competing inquiries before Victoria's anti-corruption body. Either side of politics caught up with it, no satisfactory outcomes. Is this a cautionary tale for a federal anti-corruption body?
Oh, look, I don't know what they'll do federally. They're saying they're going to introduce a body. I'm not opposed to it. I think it's a good idea. As long as the body has teeth and as long as it is genuinely independent. I can't remember ever a government going into an election when in fact there are, I think, 4 matters before our IBAC which either involve the Premier and or his government, and the public have no idea what the subject matters are, let alone what the findings might be. You might remember in New South Wales, Barry O'Farrell had to resign over a bottle of wine. His successor, or a couple later, had to resign over a relationship with another member of Parliament. And here we've got 4 IBAC inquiries into corruption, and the public have no idea what they're about, no idea what the result will be, and we won't find out until after the election. So what an extraordinary situation that's got to be.
And of course there is an inquiry going back the other way involving the opposition leader's office. It's just totally unsatisfactory, isn't it?
Well, that's just been thrown in this week, or end of last week, by the Electoral Commission, who seem to be playing very much a political game, and you've got to call into question their independence. But yes, you're right, it has been referred to IBAC. Again, an extraordinary situation to have occurred a few days out from an election.
Look, it is an extraordinary campaign in many ways. To have Daniel Andrews now associating his opponents with the term Nazi, that certainly shows a high degree of desperation, doesn't it?
Yes, I think they are desperate. Can I just say to you, I have been very worried for a long time, not so much in Australia, but certainly in America and other parts of the world, where in fact we see the growing ingredient of hate politics, where politicians are deliberately trying to divide. So in America, you've seen actions against the blacks, the Southerners. You're now seeing it against people, many of whom are born in America, but of Chinese origin, because Mr. Trump has blamed China for COVID, etc., etc. Hate politics is very, very dangerous, and it is absolutely unacceptable. And the very fact that Labor here in Victoria is now using that term for political advantage is just unacceptable. I mean, I can argue against Labor on policies, some policies, not all, some I agree with. But I don't and never will agree with the introduction of hate politics, because I just think that is so destructive. Hate is such a waste of energy, and if hate is allowed to continue, it could have awful ramifications. And we are here in Victoria a very strong multicultural society. So for the Labor Party, using that term is almost a matter in itself that should be referred to a higher body.
There was, of course, the horrible language used against Daniel Andrews, the reference to red mist. But I think and that should be called out by everybody. But the problem here is, as you say, Daniel Andrews and Labor then used that to turn it against their opponents, their main opponents, the Liberal Party, and accuse them of being associated with Nazis and bigotry.
Yes, it's not a very attractive campaign, this I can tell you. But I do believe, and I have for a long time, this election is not about Labor versus Coalition or Labor versus the Greens. This election is on one issue only, and that is Daniel Andrews and his style of government, his personality, his refusal to actually answer questions about a whole range of things, perhaps the most important being when he appeared before the inquiry into our hotel quarantine situation here, which was a disaster during COVID, which cost 801 lives. When he was asked who was the person who authorised giving the contract for the security to a New South Wales firm, he and his ministers and his senior bureaucrats all gave the same answer: we can't remember. That is what they had been briefed to answer. Now, the inquiry, headed up by an ex-judge of the family court, totally inappropriate for this, what should have been a criminal investigation, did not follow up and say to Mr. Andrews, well, I expect you now to go away, find out who actually gave that instruction, and then come back here to the inquiry. So Daniel Andrews then changed the agenda, and without notice, he blamed his health minister in the inquiry, and she had to resign from Parliament. So Daniel put himself and his own political interests not only ahead of his colleague who served him loyally, but he put himself ahead the families of the 801 people who lost their lives because he controlled the operation of hotel quarantine.